Hello and welcome to the 46 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. Tonight's episode brought to us by our good friends at S2 Cognition. S2 Cognition delivers a revolutionary approach to helping athletes understand how in-game decisions impact their performance from youth levels all the way to the pros. Sounds like S2 Cognition made Bryce Young a lot of money too, the Alabama quarterback. Sounds like he did great with his S2 scores, and he's about to be a very rich man. Speaking about people that are, rich in heart, rich in virtue, the great Kendall J. Rogers, the great Aaron J. Fitt. Gentlemen, good evening. How we doing?
We're doing well. I'm just enjoyed my day of interacting with South Carolina fans, so we're here.
What was better, Kendall, the interacting with the Gamecock Nation or the final practice of the Houston Summer Breeze softball unit?
Oh, that's a tough one. Can I pick C, getting a root canal?
You're gonna pass. Oh, that's great. Fitzy, you're the smartest one of the whole operation. You stay off of Twitter on Mondays. Yeah. We should get that notarized, Fitzy, that you will from here to four never go on Twitter on Mondays.
I think that's it's just good policy. It's just good policy.
I don't
Kendall,
like that.
listen, well, Kendall, you're out there. You
gotta embrace the hate.
You're Mr. Twitter. You got the blue check. The rest of us, we ain't got no blue checks no more. So you're the guy. You get to deal with.
Are you real people?
I'm not even. I'm a bot. I'm actually a bot.
Yeah, I don't even know who I am anymore. Boys, all right, let's get into the inane banter, and then we're going to talk some college baseball.
Sure.
I'm feeling very festive. We got 4 weeks left in the regular season, 4 weekends, then conference tournament week, which is one of my favorite weeks. I know I'm going to Globe Life now, so I know I've got some really fun stuff. I'm going to get to do that ALS game at Fenway Park, which is just an honor. And then with the great Mike Monaco and Danny Wexelman, I'm going to get to go to Globe Life, which will be amazing. Zeke and Zonk and the great Clayton J. Matvick, big sizzle, if you will. So here's there's no segue for this. I don't know how I thought of this, but here's my question for you two. I'll answer it first. When you were kids, was there a house in your neighborhood that was the sleepover house? And so when I was a kid, there were 2 events that were guaranteed sleepovers. I've never quizzed my parents about this. Was this like just get us out of the house, or I don't know what this was. But the house was the Moyers. E.J. Moyer was a longtime pitching coach at Malvern Prep, by the way. Played at Penn State, pitched at Penn State. But E.J. and Danny Moyer, their mom, every sleepover was there. They had this basement, TV. Here were our 2 big events. Friday nights, Dukes of Hazzard. Dukes of Hazzard was on Friday nights, guaranteed sleepover. The other one, I'm really dating myself here.
You
the
sure
other
are.
one, the other one was WWF Wrestling on Prism, which was like one of the original cable paid channels. Now, the Rooneys did not have Prism. There was no way that Michael P. Rooney Jr. was going in on Prism. The Moyers were all in on the paid channels. So we would go over there and watch the pay-per-view wrestling at the Spectrum in Philly. So big time. I mean, like all the root beer you can drink, Fitzy. We were just, crushing it. So let's start with you, Fitzy. Any sleepovers in, the greater New England area when you were a kid?
My place was a pretty decent pad for that, because especially in the summertime, we had a nice little pool up back. Ooh. And it just a really nice summertime hangout. My spot. But there are a couple others in the neighborhood. I don't have any good stories really to go along with this. You kind of threw this curveball at us, but yeah, I mean,
But so the Fitz would host the sleepovers more often than not.
We would host some, yeah.
I like it. I was all in on sleepovers. I probably hurt my parents' feelings permanently, but like I was all in. Yeah, I would sleep over a stranger's house. I was all in on the sleepover. Kendall, let's say you.
A stranger's house.
I was traveling, man.
Might go that far.
10-year-old. No, that wasn't allowed.
It's kind of interesting. Like growing up in East Texas, this is kind of a different time. But like, I was pretty much one of those kids that, like, when school was out, especially on like a Friday, I'd go down the street to my friend's house, and like my parents would not see me till like midnight. So I wasn't like a sleepover person, but I would I'll stay at my friend's house till 12 or 1 in the morning. They live like 3 or 4 houses down, and I would just go home at like 1 in the morning.
Was it the type of deal, Kendall, where your mom or dad walk out the front door and just start yelling your name and you hear it and walk back, or was it more phone call?
I learned at a very young age that whenever my mom dropped my middle name, that means get your you-know-what home.
Yeah.
Like when she said, she said Kendall Bradley Rogers, that's when I knew to get home. But if she only said my first and last name, I called her bluff.
What if she give you a Kendall Zebediah Rogers? Is that just...
You better be in a dead sprint.
Well, I'm not lucky enough to have such an esteemed middle name like that. But yeah, it's kind of funny. I had a couple of friends or two brothers growing up that, I would always go to their house, and they're like the most competitive two people you would ever meet in your life. And literally every single time, whether it was we were playing baseball, wiffle ball, football, every single time, and they'll probably hear this, but every single time that we would go play, like they would start fist fighting. There's something ridiculous. Like, one of them would push the other, and they would just start throwing bows. Mom would send them home, and I'd call back then, for you young bucks out there, college baseball players listening, we had this thing called like a landline where you would call from your home to someone else's house. So I'd call down there and be like, hey, can they come out and play yet? And I'd always just keep calling back. And after about 2 hours,
that's how Martha's gonna say. That's how Martha came to be. That's amazing.
Exactly.
So
that cracked me out. It was every single time we started playing something, bows would just start flying.
Oh,
they're like the tennis. They were like 2022 Tennessee baseball, but down my block.
That's so great.
Kendall would call 6 times a night until he could break the scoop. All right, fine, they can come play.
Yeah, Kendall asked their mom.
I'll tell you, I'm taking the job.
When they're going to be let out, you have to tell me first. I'm breaking this story.
Hey, this day and age, I'm tired of Martha hearing injury news. Good gracious, man.
Oh man, yeah, the injuries are going to be. Most of the injury stuff that I've heard today or in the last 72 hours has been optimistic, but sometimes I worry that it's like optimistic, like you're trying to sell me something, not optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, like the latest one is like Jack Finley at Notre Dame is like, has a forearm strain that they're getting evaluated. And obviously, Notre Dame, is you'll read in the postseason buzz today, Notre Dame helped its case over the weekend with a series sweep of Virginia. And obviously, if they don't have him down the stretch, that hurts their chances. But as of right now, they'd probably be in the field. So that's a big one to follow, especially in the ACC down the stretch.
Well, and this one, I don't know if it's out there yet, but it's confirmed that Jonathan Santucci will miss the rest of the season. So for a Duke team coming off a sweep of Louisville, he's been out for a few weeks now, and they've kept on winning. It's really amazing.
Almost played better, not obviously they're not better without him,
right,
but they've played great.
They played awesome.
That's something about their depth.
Well, I mean, and really, it's and I have a story coming on this that'll be up probably when this podcast is up. But it's just so impressive the way they've built that pitching staff. It's really, they've got a couple of like graduate transfers that they've plugged in as openers, and they're like gradually getting a little bit more out of those guys. But really, they built it from the back forward, and there's a ton of mixing and matching. They don't have any horses. They haven't had one guy on their staff go more than 5 innings all year. I mean, like even, I think that includes Santucci. I don't think he would go 5 complete, but not more than 5.
Wow.
And so that's pretty wild that they're as good as they are, and I mean, it's a testament to, hey, like they realize they can run guys in and out and play matchups, and they've done a good job developing some young arms and really utilizing their veteran arms very well. So it's a neat story. I mean, they're in first place in their division right now.
Yeah,
I worry that North Carolina's got the opposite problem. Like they're trying to do what Duke's doing, but it's blowing up in their face. Just North Carolina, it's 6 arms a game, and somebody's going to run into a problem, and then you've lost. That's these are kids. They're not professionals. Where hey, I know this 28-year-old can give me 3 hitters tonight.
Yeah.
So.
I'll tell you what. Go ahead, Aaron.
Well, I mean, and just to your point, Runes, I do feel like ultimately I'm going to bet on teams that have horses over teams that don't. But there's fewer horses to go around than there used to be. It's just a different era.
No doubt.
Yeah, you got Wake Forest, Teddy McGraw, an all-American type of pitcher, and they're they haven't skipped a beat. Real quick, the Magnolia State with Ole Miss and Mississippi State. For Mississippi State, speaking of injuries, it sounds like Nate Dome. His injury is not as bad as they thought it would be. I saw Chris Lemonis was on Sports Talk Mississippi today and said that they're actually very optimistic that his situation is like week to week. Obviously, that would have been a massive blow for Mississippi State had they lost him for the year. And the guy, fellas, I really felt bad for over the weekend was Hunter Elliott. We've talked all year about him coming back. He finally returns to the mound against LSU. I mean, probably the worst team imaginable to have to come back from an injury and go face that lineup. But he gives up 5 runs in an inning of work and walked 5 people. So clearly, Elliott not really ready to come back just yet.
Yeah, but you start thinking about this, guys. Like we could whip around the league, or whip around the country,
Yeah.
and there's like these core players that are like kind of hurt or not hurt. Like I'm thinking about Arizona State. Like the difference, Arizona State keeps hanging in there. Maybe you could argue they're doing more than that, but without Ryan Campos, I'm not betting on Arizona State. He's so important to them psychologically in the lineup. He's leading the Pac-12 in hitting. He's their primary catcher. Like he's got an oblique thing, which scares the bejesus out of you. So you don't know there.
Mm-hmm.
You think about LSU. I mean, what is their roster going to look like in a few weeks? Hey, how about in the Big 12? J.J. Weatherholt looks like he's back.
Yeah,
Nolan McClain, maybe.
It sounds like Nolan McClain is very close to coming back. And, J.J. Weatherholt came into the game as a pinch hitter against TCU over the weekend. I think he came in like the 4th or 5th inning, and he proceeded to get like 2 doubles and 3 RBIs. So it gives you an idea of his worth. But, going back to Arizona State real quick, it's kind of funny. Like, I watched 2 of those games over the weekend. And a couple of weeks ago when I did a story in Arizona State, Willie B kind of mentioned that, like, hey, like, I'm really happy of, like, where we are as a team. But, like, man, like, I wish these guys would, like, get off to a little bit better start. And once again, like, over the weekend, they didn't get off to a great start. And I don't think they got off to a great start in any of the games. And they just found a way to win. So, like, I guess on one hand, like, it's ultra frustrating if you're that coaching staff to get off to a slow start every game. And you're right, eventually catch up to you. But right now, man, I mean, they've got like it. That team definitely has the it factor.
Yeah. USC too, right? I don't know if you guys watch much of the USC UCLA, but if you made me, no offense to USC, because I love that team, but if you put a gun to my head and made me make a wager on a team for the postseason, I'm taking UCLA all day long right now. Even without Cody Schreier. Speaking of another injury, Cody Schreier, their shortstop, I don't know.
He's so good though.
Yeah. But Kyle Karros is back. That's positive. But man, you just mentioned the it factor, Kendall. Like for me, USC's got it. Like they really know who they are. Austin Overn at center field is just a flyer, like, breakneck speed he plays with. And so USC is a fun team too.
Yeah, the other 2 it factors I'd mentioned that I saw over the weekend, this is actually a pretty good discussion. The 2 it factor teams I saw over the weekend, number 1, South Carolina. I was really impressed just the way they took it to Florida, and Aaron was there for one of those games, so he can kind of talk about the Gamecocks. But I was really impressed just the way they took it to Florida. I mean, they controlled that entire series. They got Jack Caglione out of the game early in the series finale. I think when you consider, we talk about Arizona State not having Ryan Campos. I mean, look at what South Carolina didn't have over the weekend against one of the better teams in college baseball. And what do? They swept them.
Yeah.
Fitzy, what are their injuries, South Carolina? So Noah Hall's still out with a back, right?
Yeah, and it sounds like it may be a while longer.
And then the third baseman, is it LeCroy Talmadge? Am I saying that right?
Vice versa, Talmadge, LeCroy.
Sorry.
I like LeCroy Talmadge.
Oh yeah, that's
good too.
Right. That is good.
Sounds like he's from like the Eastern Appalachian Mountains.
So it's
they named him after a sparkling water.
What is his name? Somebody say it again, because I'm all twisted.
Talmadge LeCroy.
Yeah,
okay, Talmadge LeCroy.
He's got a hamstring, so I mean, I don't think that one is, just as long as hamstrings take. They take as long as they take, right? But he should be back at some point. I know. So Gavin Casas had a rib thing after that collision on Friday. Did he wind up not playing again in that series? I believe that is the case.
Yeah, I don't think he played again.
And so, I mean, they've got a few guys, and then McGillis still working his way back, I believe.
Oh yeah,
from was a hamate, I believe. So that one, I think he's got to be getting closer. He's been out a while now, but I mean, they've kept on winning. I mean, really, it's a testament, kind of like Wake Forest. It's a testament to South Carolina's pitching depth. Is you lose a guy like Noah Hall, who's having a great year, and they just slide in the lefty Becker, who they like Becker a lot.
It's a good left-handed arm.
Yeah, they talked him up in the fall and kind of thought he could push for a weekend starter job, but they just didn't really have a spot for him in that weekend rotation. And now that a spot has opened up, he's run with it and done really well. And of course, their bullpen is just such a strength. And you can get extended innings as you need from a guy like James Hicks, the sinker baller. Just he's been awesome, nails for them back there, and they're in great shape on the mound. That's what's so impressive, especially if Will Sanders can do what he did on Thursday when I was down there. I mean, he looked like the guy that we thought he would be, and it's still, hey, I mean, we get it. The book is out. Like, the fastball doesn't miss bats. Everyone knows that. That's the knock on Sanders. But when he can locate it, And I mean, I don't think he missed a single bat with his fastball. I didn't really get a swing and miss all game on Thursday, but he still was very successful because he had the best curveball he's had all season long. He's still got the slider. He's got the changeup. He can miss bats with all three of those secondary pitches. And so it's just a matter of him keep using the fastball enough to keep hitters honest, locating and having confidence, and I think he talked about that. It's just kind of that mental piece, the confidence piece. It's taking a little while to get that back. He's felt like his stuff has been the best it's ever been all season long, and the results haven't been there, but now they're maybe coming, and that changes their team. That changes their team if he can be a dude again, atop the rotation like he was Thursday.
Yep. I think the other thing for me too, speaking of South Carolina and the SEC East, I think what's really interesting to me too is just Tennessee, the way that its entire weekend went. You look back at the series opener. I'm not sure if you guys watched any of the series opener, but in the series opener, I mean, they showed they kind of panned to the Tennessee dugout going to the bottom of the ninth, and the dugout looks lifeless. Tony V's just looked like he's staring off into the distance. And you don't think they're coming back, but Dylan Dreiling, the talented freshman, Kavaris Tears, who looks the part, they both get big hits, and the Tennessee comes back and wins in the ninth. Then guys, they just proceed to score 27 runs the rest of the weekend. They look like a different team offensively the rest of the weekend, and they look like a different team emotionally the rest of the weekend. So I'm kind of fascinated to see if that was kind of the switch Tennessee needed to get them back on track. I still don't think, no matter what they do the rest of the year, they'll be anywhere near as good as last year's team. But I do wonder if this is kind of what gets them and kicks them into gear into being a top 10 caliber club. Because I mean, those last two games, it was a total annihilation. Those weren't even competitive games.
Well, and the pitching roles are solidified, at least for now, right? Chase Burns is going to be he's going to be your moment of truth reliever. Yeah, and for whatever reason, it's like Will Sanders gets a week off, and next thing you know, he's fixed, right? Chase Burns gets a new role, and he's fixed. Gino DiMari talked about this with Miami. Hey, CJ Kavis is our best pure hitter. I want to hit him third. I hit him third. It's his draft year. He stinks. I move him back to first for no good baseball reason other than third doesn't seem to sit with him. All of a sudden, he's raking again, right? It's like baseball players are funny that way. It's by the way, I had Texas Tech over the weekend, you guys. They're kind of a young, immature team, but on the right day, gosh, they are dangerous. That offense can just get on you. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the old Florida State offenses where all 9 dudes are just if you throw a first pitch softy at them, you better chuck and duck. If it's a first pitch fastball center cut, or if it's a first pitch hanging off speed pitch that they've seen before, they're putting a violent swing on it. And with 2 strikes, they don't quit either. It's not free swing the whole at bat. They're just really unsettled on the mound. Mason Molina's trying to figure, he's been okay on Fridays. They've done that twice, but they're supposed to get Bo Blessy back, who they have high hopes for. I don't know. Are they going to?
Yeah, he was up to 97, 98 in the fall.
Yeah, the position player group's young. It's going to be almost the whole team back. Owen Washburn's still out. But, man, they are – I caught them on the right night, and it was – I mean, I don't know what you throw them first pitch to get them off balance.
I think old school Florida State's a really good comp. That's a very good comp for Texas Tech this year because you look at their lineup top to bottom, and you're kind of okay, outside of Gavin Cash, who in that lineup would you consider a superstar? There's not many of those guys, but they all have really good approaches, just kind of the Tim Tadlock way. But, they're a strange team in the sense that, here's one of the other things that a lot of people were asking about today, after our chat on Twitter was what in the world's going on with Texas Tech's hosting chances, because they're one of those teams that clearly from a human poll standpoint, they're clearly a top 20 club, but then you look at the RPI, they're at 63. I mean, TCU last year didn't host out of the Big 12 as a Big 12 champ at 38. So Texas Tech pretty much has 3% chance, 5% chance to host right now. So they're just a very odd team from a resume standpoint.
And not as good on the road, obviously. That's been notorious for them.
Go ahead,
I would just say I'll take the under on 5%. They're not hosting a regional. I mean, at this point, it's just a matter of can they get themselves in solid at-large position. I mean,
you would have to. I mean, you pretty much have to win every series here the rest of the way, and probably just roll through the Big 12 tournament. And even then, I'm not sure you're getting in position.
Yeah, because even if they go 6-3 down the stretch, that only gets them to 14-10. And but
Yeah.
they're at Kansas State, hard place to play, at West Virginia, team's super hot, and then Kansas at home. I mean, every one of those is perilous. I feel like Texas Tech's maybe a year away. Like this is definitely a postseason team to me. Like you think about the eyeball test. You watch Texas Tech. There's no way they're a bubble team from the eyeball test, right? Like they're legitimately good. But they are immature, like they will fall asleep on you. Like that's what young teams do sometimes is they're running Baylor off the field and they could just bury them and they just kind of, as the great Joe Healy would say, they start to play with their food a little bit.
And as the RPI needs report tells us, just a guideline, but from Boyd's World, if they win out, they need to win out.
Yeah, I just saw that too.
To finish in the top 32 of the RPI. They need to win 11 out of 13 just to get in the top 45, and they have no path to the top 16. So it's the math. I mean, maybe the Big 12 tournament, they can make another leap if they just finish torrid. I just don't see it, guys. Again, they just got to play themselves in at-large position. That's all they got to worry about.
I don't want to get you on a rant, Fitzy, but again, intended schedule, Texas Tech is just getting screwed by, who schedules Gonzaga for 3, Grand Canyon for 2, Stanford for 2, and the Big 12. Like that's scheduling to hurt your career, not scheduling, and that schedule has left them highly ranked, but with a poor RPI.
Yeah.
How do we make sense of that?
That, and as I've said repeatedly, it was 4 games against Western Illinois. Is that what it is?
Probably.
It's just destroying them in the RPI. And that's, again, I'm not going to go on that tangent again. It is what it is. We need to have the fit rule. We need to have a few games.
Mulligans, breakfast balls.
Breakfast, sure. With 4 games they played against Western Illinois, who's 5-29.
Yeah.
I mean, number 291 RPI team. And again, the bottom of your resume, everyone's got a bottom of their resume, and there's not that big of a difference winning the games you're supposed to win. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm going to my same old rant. I'm sorry.
No, let's do this, boys. Let's go to the mid-majors. I sent you guys 2 lists. So the talented people at ESPN they create these graphics for us every week. And one of the graphics they did this week, which was super cool. You guys know Bill Palladino. He texted me today. One of the greats, producers at ESPN, Billy P. So there's a graphic they created about some of the mid-majors that are very dangerous this year. Like it feels like what I like about this year's mid-majors is they are so the usual suspects in regionals. And that is, to me, the Kent State Stony Brook model, where you get a bunch of kids who have been in regionals. It's conceivable that these kids have been in regionals more than the famous team that they're going to be in a regional with. And so here's the 8 teams we have right now. Campbell, obviously, Coastal, DBU, East Carolina, who obviously had a really rough weekend getting swept at Wichita State. Although, I don't know, maybe Wichita State. I don't know. Does that tell us more about East Carolina or Wichita State? I'm not really sure. Indiana State, Southern Miss, UConn, UTSA. So the 8 right now are Campbell, Coastal, DBU, East Carolina, Indiana State, Southern Miss, UConn, and UTSA. For me, the 2 teams that maybe I'm a little bit more wobbly on as I sit here right now are East Carolina, because I'm really disappointed for this second weekend where we laid an egg. And then Southern Miss, just, I don't know. Fitzy, I'm going to defer to you on that. I didn't love what they did against Coastal. So here's the second list. And you tell me if any of these teams in the second list strike your fancy. Cal State Fullerton, Northeastern, UNCW, Oral Roberts, Florida Gulf Coast, Sam Houston, Grand Canyon, LMU. Grand Canyon's they're a game behind Sam Houston right now in the WAC. That race has gotten really tricky. Let me read that back real quick for the listeners. Fullerton, Northeastern, UNCW, Oral Roberts, FGCU, Sam Houston, Grand Canyon, LMU. Any of the teams and Fitzy, feel free to comment on Southern Miss because I just took a shot at them. Tell me anything on list 2 strike your fancy.
Well, yes. I mean, I think a lot of those teams are intriguing. I still think, I think it's easy for us to just kind of write off FGCU after they had that really stumble last weekend against Eastern Kentucky. And, I don't love their pitching, but they're really not that different to me from Coastal Carolina. I mean, the teams are constructed pretty darn similarly. They're really dangerous offenses that can scare you, and neither of them is really going to shut you down on the mound. I mean, but like either one of those teams could slug their way through a regional, and they don't have the kind of RPI that Coastal has, and they don't have the kind of midweek wins that Coastal has, that pedigree. But I do think that they're constructed very similarly, and both those teams are dangerous.
I like it. Kendall, you're muted. There you go.
You're talking about on list 2?
Yeah, list 2. Anybody? So if I was going to take out like an East Carolina, which I'm not, or I was going to take out a Southern Miss, which I might, is there anybody on list 2 that you like to jump up? Obviously, you probably like all the teams on list 2, but
yeah, I mean, I've lost all faith in like Grand Canyon. LMU is really interesting on Friday nights with Diego Barrera.
Yep.
I think UNCW is really interesting.
Yeah.
I wrote those guys up last week, and I was talking to Randy Hood about their club, and the thing I like about them, and I think Aaron is going to see them here pretty soon. But the thing I liked about them was, they have some nice pieces at the top of the lineup with Jack Groom, Tanner Thatch, was a really interesting, 6'4", 220-pound left-handed hitter. And the thing I like about them too is they've got some nice offensive pieces. But, from talking to Randy Hood, like when you look at their pitching, they've got Jacob Schaefer on the front end. They've got, Ethan Chenault and, a power pitcher and Brett Banks in the back end. So, whereas some of these mid-majors, and I'll even throw Coastal in this boat, like Coastal is really offensive, but there's not a lot of arms that you trust. When you look at UNCW, you can look at Jacob Schaefer, you can look at Ethan Chenault, Brett Banks, etc., and go, you know what? Like, I trust their pitching. And so I think UNCW is really intriguing. Now, they're one of those teams that won't make the postseason unless they win the tournament because of their RPI as of today. But they could be really dangerous in a regional. Maybe kind of have the impact that Campbell did in that Knoxville regional a few years ago, where they just give those power teams all they can handle but fall just short. That could be UNCW this year if they can just make it.
Fitzy, can I ask you about Southern Miss and Coastal? When you left there, did you what was your first flinch on that? Because I feel like I don't know what to do with Southern Miss. I feel like I keep waiting for this veteran team to emerge, and I keep being skeptical of Coastal because of the pitching, even though, what's their closer's name? Teddy Sharkey? Is that right?
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he seems good. And I feel like both things might be wrong. Maybe Coastal is legit and maybe Southern Miss is just not their year.
Yeah, I mean, so I was there the first 2 days of the series when Coastal put up a lot of runs. I mean, they scored 15 runs in the opener and 20 in game 2, and that was against Tanner Hall in game 1, and Billy Oldham in game 2. I mean, those are kind of the guys, and they hung a 10 spot on Billy Oldham in an inning plus. So obviously I walked away thinking, oh geez, like Southern Miss, do they have what it takes on the mound? I mean, and part of it is you just, Tanner Hall wasn't sharp.
Right.
But like he's got to be sharp because he's not a big velocity guy. I mean, his stuff was down a little bit, but I don't know. There's just not a lot of margin for error there. I mean, he's a change-up guy, but I mean, he's had so much success in his career. Like I do feel like it's still a guy that I believe in, a guy that will bounce back. But he's just got to be really good for them to be good. I mean, that's just that's the whole pitching staff is built around that. Oldham again, kind of just a pitchability right-hander. It's not stuff that's going to blow you away. It just feels like both those teams to me. I walked away thinking they're both light on the mound. And Southern Miss has been swinging the bats better after kind of a slow start. I mean, they put up a bunch of runs, against Old Dominion and I think at Troy, they scored some runs. James Madison last week. And even in this series, I mean, they scored 7, and 15 runs. Southern Miss did in these 3 games. So it's like, I actually think their offense is fine. I mean, I think that's actually the strength of this team right now, which is what we thought it would be heading into the year. But ultimately, they're not as good as last year's Southern Miss team. They just lost too much, and they're not as good as Coastal either. I mean, despite the fact that Southern Miss blew them out in game 3, there's no shame in losing 2 out of 3 on the road against the top 10 team. They were just clearly outclassed those first 2 days. Like it was not really competitive, and I don't know. I mean, ultimately, I don't know if either one of those teams feels necessarily Omaha caliber to me. even though we have Coastal ranked number 6 right now, and I love their offense, love Coastal's offense. It's so tenacious, it's so deep, it has power, it has balance, but neither of them have, in my opinion, Omaha caliber pitching staffs. That's just the reality.
Yep. So interesting. Hey, if you guys don't mind, we'll get to the power leagues after this. I had Indiana and Indiana State last week, and I've warned you guys out on the chat about this, so this is more for the listeners than for you guys. But Indiana and Indiana State are really interesting. Let me start with Indiana. Indiana, Jeff Mercer is a fascinating head coach. Like, first of all, it's like the Indiana born and bred thing, and then also he's just very cerebral, and they're into the analytics, and they're not afraid of unique strategies, and they're very light on the mound right now. They've got Luke Sennard, the big 6'8" transfer from Western Kentucky, who's their one weekend starter, and they're just doing openers and throwing volume at it. They've got this, reliever from Houston that we talked about, Craig Yoho, who's just, 4 years of injury as an infielder, and now he's throwing 93, nuclear fastballs with this crazy changeup. The thing that's interesting about Indiana is they're young. They have a bunch of position players that, like Brock Tibbetts, Devin Taylor, Josh Pine, Tyler Cerny, Carter Matheson. They're all underclassmen. Any one of the 5 of those kids could be the Big 10 player of the year someday. Like, they're all athletic and physical and really good. So Indiana feels early to me, but they're just playing great. Indiana State, as I've told you guys, they are just not your ordinary mid-major. They're part of what you think they are. They're very old. They would kind of remind you of Texas State last year in that they're very, very old. But their ace, Matt Jasek, is like this Thomas Eshelman. I think he's got single-digit walks. Their Saturday guy, Connor Fenlong, he throws nothing but cutters. He throws 89 to 90 mile an hour cutters, and you've got to just face this fastball with movement. And it's early contact. He's off the barrel. Their closer, Jared Spencer, is a Josh Hader kid. He's left-handed with crazy hair. He's from Michigan, just has bloomed velocity-wise. He's up to 97. His slider has a 64% swing and miss rate. Think about that. Every 3 sliders he throws, 2 of them create swing and miss. It's this alien pitch. The national average is about 33%. They've got a shortstop from Puerto Rico, Randall Diaz. They've got a second baseman from Venezuela, Josue Urdaneta. They've got, 5th-year seniors, 6th-year seniors. They're top 10 in the country in defense. You guys could tell I'm so drunk on Indiana State. It's comical. But I'm just telling you, they're not ordinary. They started out 2-8. They're 23-4 since. I love unique roster construction, and it's so unique. It's like Upper Midwest meets Latin America. So anyway, I apologize for the rant. I'm all in.
That's okay. I'm just looking at the roster. That is very unique. Venezuela to Terre Haute, Indiana.
Is it
interesting? Is
it an Omaha caliber team, or is it a super regional caliber team? What do you think, Rudes?
Yeah, I think it's here's the other thing I like about Indiana State. I'm knocking on wood, they get in a regional. This will be their 3rd regional in 4 years. So it's not going to be new for their program. They're very hard to play against. They can execute. They've got just enough power. They're really hard to score against. That closer is always looming. That's one of the shames about college baseball right now is that that closer is going to have a million people in his ear this summer. And so who knows? Maybe he wants to stay close to home. That would be heartbreaking for him to leave Indiana State. Who knows what happens? But he's awesome. And he's an absolute, like you're in the other dugout. You're thinking about Jared Spencer in the 4th inning. Like, this dude's coming in the 7th. And I don't know. Are we going to be the first team to hit his slider all year? It's crazy.
They're going to make the postseason because at this point, according to the news report, they just have to go. They have to go. Let's see, 16. Yeah, they just have to win. They have to win 10 out of their last 16.
Yeah, they're just really good.
10 out of their last 16 before the conference tournament.
That's the whole. Oh, go ahead, Fitzy.
Go ahead, Ruiz. Finish your thought.
I was going to say that's the whole point of the conversation. Is I think this year's mid majors are a little bit different. I just feel. I'm usually smitten with mid-majors, but I feel more convicted this year than normal. Maybe I'm just talking myself into it, but I don't think I am.
Well, go ahead, Fitzy. The other thing. Well, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Aaron. You were about to say
I was just going to make the point that the way you were talking about that closer for Indiana State, I mean, it reminds me of Kendall's boy at UTSA, and it reminds me of Kyle Ament Simon Miller at UTSA and Kyle Ament at Dallas Baptist, who has 37 strikeouts and 17 innings and a 106 ERA. I mean, I've said repeatedly, I think, so I don't have to rehash, but I really, really believe in DBU. I feel like to me, that's the team that they have almost East Carolina's rotation, with Ryan Johnson and Braxton Bragg having both really good years, and Zach Heaton. I mean, I'll go to war with those three guys. I think they have a really legit, maybe elite bullpen, that kind of compares with South Carolina and Wake Forest, some of the other bullpens we really like. So I just think this pitching staff is real, and it's not as offensive a team as we've seen from other DBU clubs over the years, but I think it's good enough because I think their pitching is really good. And so again, like there's lots of teams in the mid-major ranks and elsewhere in the power conferences that can put up a ton of runs, and maybe you can win a regional using the coastal formula. Like if you're going to score 20 runs and give up 7, that's going to work out okay for you. But like I still ultimately am mostly going to bet on teams that can really pitch and play defense. And for me, DBU checks that box. It sounds like Indiana State could be in that category. Maybe UTSA, Kendall.
Yeah, I mean, can I make another point here in the sense that, I mean, you look at the top 25 right now, okay? LSU, Wake Forest, South Carolina, I think we would all three be surprised if they're not in Omaha. Florida, you could probably throw in that mix with Brandon Ely back. But really, outside of those 4 teams, and Vanderbilt, they have a couple of injuries you're kind of wondering about a little bit on the mound. But other than those 4 teams, like there's not really another team in college baseball that I go, yeah, I don't see anybody beating them in a regional or a super. Mm-hmm. So to me, that just really opens you up to having some, I don't want to even call Indiana State a surprise team because, they've got a high RPI, but it opens you up to the Campbells and we talked about Dallas Baptist and East Carolina, not punching their ticket to Omaha. To me, it opens a door up for those programs even more when you look at that and go, there's about 3 to 4 teams I feel pretty good about getting to Omaha. Outside of that, I think it's a total crapshoot.
Yeah, and think about the last 3 years of tournament play, the team that we would have sat here on this podcast and said, oh, yeah, like you can lock UCLA in, you can lock Arkansas in, I mean, we would never say it that way, but you know what I mean? Like UCLA is legit going to Omaha. Arkansas 2021 is going to Omaha. Tennessee 2022 is going to Omaha, and then they get clipped. So it's... Yeah,
and even Arkansas, like I like Arkansas's club, but I've kind of felt like they've played a little bit over their skis with all their injuries. And now that they're getting more injuries, like I just feel like it's starting to catch up with them a little bit.
Losing Wegner is huge. It's not like he's going to be out a while, right?
Yeah.
What's his injury? What's it, wrist, Kendall?
It was a thumb.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's, if you remember, that was the injury that, knocked Brett Minnick out for A&M for, what was it, 6 weeks. And notice the difference that team made when he came back. Like they've been a totally different offense. So it gives you an idea of, how, having a guy out with that kind of injury, how much that can impact your lineup.
I'll make this prediction and we'll move on to players, boys. I think this postseason, including the tournaments, is just going to be, there's going to be some hellacious comebacks. Like I don't see teams with that much lockdown pitching. Ironically, I feel like I see more of it in the mid majors. To your point, Fitzy, a second ago, I feel like there's going to be some hellacious comebacks in all the, when the pressure's really on. And it's going to be amazing. Now, speaking of big time comebacks that are generated by offense, let me tell you about Blast Baseball. If you're ready to dominate at the plate, Blast Baseball is trusted by more MLB and college teams than any other hitting solution. The Blast sensor attaches to the knob of any bat. It'll provide real-time feedback for you with every swing. Go to blastmotion.com. Enter the code D1Baseball at checkout. You save $10. D1Baseball at checkout. You save $10. So, boys, let's do this. Let's go around some of the power leagues and let's discuss players of the year candidates. Some of this is easy. Some of this, it's going to require some thinking. Let's start with the SEC. I think we're down to Dylan Cruz or Ethan Petrie. Is that the final 2? Like Tommy Tanks, the SEC numbers maybe not quite good enough. Charlie Condon just feels like Georgia's got other, Georgia's season's not going to support a player of the year candidate. I don't know. I just feel like it's Dylan Cruz or Ethan Petrie. What say you guys?
Yeah, it's going to be one of those 2 guys. But let's not downplay my man Charlie Condon. I mean, 422 average,
Great year.
18 homers, 54 RBIs, 1.368 OPS, 511 OBP. I mean, those are pretty special numbers for a redshirt freshman.
Yeah, if there's no Dylan Cruz or Ethan Petrie, he's a slam dunk. But there is, unfortunately, for him, unfortunately, a Dylan Cruz or Ethan Petrie.
I have not. By the way, I have not like dialed in on Georgia so far this year. I mean, is he a guy that can make a jump prospect wise like Wyatt Langford did as a redshirt freshman? Like, is he that kind of player?
I mean, go ahead, Runes.
I haven't in fairness, I haven't watched him enough, but his profile is not awesome, right? It's like, I don't know, is he Richie Sexton-ish? He's like kind of like this 6'6", lean right-handed hitter positionally. Yeah. I'm not totally sure. What is he playing for Georgia, by the way? Outfield?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you think, Fitzy? It's a risky profile because it's all about the bat.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I don't have as good a feel for him, to be honest with you. I've not seen him play in person yet, but I do think he's kind of already made that jump. Like, he made the jump last summer in the North Woods League, and obviously the power is real, and he's also, by the way, performing well in conference. I mean, hitting 338 in the league with a 1,200 ops, 9 home runs in conference play. So that's loud, but it doesn't stack up with what Cruz and Petrie are doing in conference play. This is now, and our buddy Chris from Louisville, he makes a pretty good argument about Petrie's conference only numbers. My goodness, it's a 1611 OPS in the SEC. This is, again, the best competition. I mean, certainly it's the best pitching in the country. Is in the SEC. There's no question about that. The arms, the caliber of the arms you face in that league, way above everybody else. 446 he's hitting in conference with a 519 on base and a 1092 slugging. He's got 13 homers in 17 games and 39 RBIs. It's just absurd. All that said, Dylan Cruz is hitting 492 in the league with a 1483 ops and twice as many walks as strikeouts, and he's playing a premium defensive position and playing premium defense at that position in center field. So it's a real race, and I think it's just wild because I think we would all agree that Dylan Cruz is the best player in the country, but he's not necessarily a runaway choice for conference player of the year in his own league.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I would say like Dylan Cruz is the MVP and Ethan Petrie is the player of the year. Because I think there's a little bit of difference there, right? Like, I think when you look at like the defensive attributes, like you can say like Dylan Cruz is more valuable, but then you can say like Ethan Petrie's had the better year.
Yeah, I don't know. I never really bought that nonsense when people try to say that those are two different things. I don't buy it.
Kendall threw me for a loop with the
trophy. I've made you speechless.
Take another minute, Runes. We can
Kendall threw me for a loop with, like, you're supposed to be the Texan, like, hey, winning and losing, and like you threw a participation trophy in there.
That's true.
Okay, well, in that case, Ethan Petrie would probably be the winner right now, and Dylan Cruz would be the freaking loser.
Wow!
Now there we go. Now we're going East Texas.
Put it on the table.
Excuse me, Jordan Cruz.
Yeah, Jordan Cruz.
Oh, that's great.
So
pitcher of the year is easy, right? Paul Skeens. We're done there.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep. Okay, now let me take you to the.
Well, who would be the runner-up?
That's an interesting question.
That'd be the better question. Like, who's the runner-up, not who's the winner?
So in conference play, just again looking at the conference numbers, boy, there's a lot of guys, big names that have struggled kind of in the league. It's a very offensive league. Much as we talk about how they have much better arms than any other league, they do, and they're still getting hit. Like Hurston Waldrop, he's got 53 strikeouts and 37 innings in conference play. We also got a 4.86 ERA. It's like there's a lot of that going around in this league. Brendan Sproat, similar. Chase Burns, of course, as we've talked about, with an 8+ ERA in conference. There's a lot of big name guys that just don't really have the numbers to match. I don't know who. Is there an obvious second guy?
I don't think so. I mean, it's
Hunter
really
Holland's ERA is up to 3.5 now, or 3.4 now, so it's probably not him.
Whoever the silver medalist is going to be, it's going to be whoever makes a run from here, right? Like it's.
Could be Devin Futrell. I mean, in the league, it's a 2.34 ERA, 27 strikeouts, 4 walks in 34 innings. So I mean, maybe that's the answer.
And you know what? In his defense, I read Aria Garrison, the beat reporter for Vandy. She did a really cool thread today, just talking about where Vandy stands. And for Futrell, pitching in Knoxville was like worst case scenario. He's your old fashioned left-handed fly ball guy, and that was not going to work out for him. So anyway, Skeens is the answer. No, this is a tricky one. Who is the ACC Player of the Year?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the first 2 names that I came to were Nick Kurtz and Jake Geloff. Now, Kurtz has missed time and still has monstrous numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, could Brock Wilkins sneak in there? I mean, it's almost got to be a Wake Forest player right now, doesn't it?
Yeah. So right now, if you look at the overall numbers, Kurtz and Wilkin are 1-2 in the conference in OPS with Geloff number 3. If you look at conference only numbers here, guys, it's Jack Hurley from Virginia Tech and Carson Jones, who are 1 and 2, which is interesting to me. The Hokies have turned it on a little bit offensively in the league. But yeah, I mean, Geloff and Kurtz aren't that far back. I don't know. Right now, I might lean Geloff just a hair. It's such a valuable piece. Or Kurtz. I mean, like you said, Kurtz missed 5 games in conference play, but still performing at a really high level. Right now, I'd say if I had to pick one, I'd say Geloff, but it's kind of like those 2 guys right there for me, with Hurley too in the mix. Yeah,
Hurley having a great year. I'd pick Kurtz, and I tend to be the guy that dings people if their team's not winning as much. I'm going to ding Jake Geloff for Virginia. Virginia is 20-0 in non-conference and 12-9 in the ACC right now, with just like some mystery losses.
Yeah,
and I don't know. Like, I don't want to act like this, what's the word? I'm heartbroken person, lover over Virginia, because I was all in on them, but I'm just really taken aback by Virginia the last month. I don't get it. I don't understand how that position player group is 12-9 in the ACC right now. It's confusing to me.
Well, it's because the pitching is ordinary, like we have been saying all along. But their position player group is still doing fine. I mean, Geloff's hitting great in the league. He's got 1162. It's not his fault.
Great
That's
player.
for sure.
Yeah, no question. He could lead the country in RBIs.
Yeah.
Kendall, you have a strong opinion on this one?
Geloff's a good answer. I mean, we'll see what Kurtz does down the stretch. I mean, he had 9 RBIs in a game the other day. So
yeah.
I feel like there's another great third baseman in the ACC that is easy to whiff on. Who am I thinking? I mean, not Wilkin. He's famous. I feel like there's another third baseman in the ACC
Morales.
Morales for sure.
I don't think he's having this kind of year.
No.
I mean, Tarzan DiMartini we like a lot. He's been fine.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it. I mean, it's funny.
Horvath.
The ACC is a very offensive league. Yeah, Horvath. That's right. I guess the question becomes, what position do you? Oh, you know what? So it's not ACC. The person who I stumbled on stats wise this week, Nick LaRusso of Maryland, has 68 or 66 RBIs. Geloff is leading the country at 68. Gavin Cash of Texas Tech at 67. Tommy Tanks at 66, and LaRusso at 66. Petrie at 64. So anyway,
wax on, wax off, Runes.
What's that? Nick LaRusso?
Never mind.
Runes had not gotten that realignment update yet.
Oh, Maryland in the.
No.
Yeah, sorry.
Forget it. Move on.
Yes. All right. Pitcher of the year. Pick your Wake Forest pitcher. I'd pick Rhett Lauder.
It is Rhett Lauder. Yes. It is Rhett Lauder. 5-0, 195 in conference play with 48 strikeouts. 48 strikeouts and 12 walks. That's pretty good.
All right. Big 12. JJ Weatherholt or Gavin Cash or a player to be named later.
I go with JJ Weatherholt. I just think he's so dynamic. And I think the biggest differentiator for me with JJ versus Gavin is JJ will hit for average. He can hit for power. And oh, by the way, like, he's a total freaking wrecking ball on the base pass. So I just like that triple threat there from JJ.
Yeah. And the fact that he's doing it in a much less offensive environment. I mean, we all know how the ball flies in Lubbock, not so much at Morgantown, but I mean, even in conference play, boy, I mean, Weatherholt's numbers really don't drop off. He's still got a 1244 OPS with and hitting 455. I mean, he's having a great year in the league as well as out of the league. He's actually got a slightly better OPS in conference than Cash does. So they're all trailing Cole Fontenelle from TCU though, 1356 OPS in conference. But my vote is for Weatherholt.
Me too. You know, Randy Macy's got an interesting situation now. When Weatherholt got hurt, they moved Tevin Tucker to the leadoff spot. He had been hitting ninth. Tevin Tucker's basically hit ninth for 5 years.
Yeah.
And he's been like a defense first shortstop, and he's never hit over 200. You know, he's always really struggled. And he has clicked this year, and he went off when Weatherholt went out. Like he went like 15 for 23 or something crazy. I still love when they hit Weatherholt first because it's like best hitter in the game hits first. It's unique, but I love it. You know, go ahead.
Just reminding our listeners, if you want to read about JJ Weatherholt, our guy Walt Villa put out a great story about him last week in the Golden Spike Spotlight. If you go to our West Virginia page or our JJ Weatherholt player page, you can find that feature.
Love it. Gavin Cash, by the way, 392, 20 home runs, 67 RBI. Statistically, it's amazing. He's a little too aggressive. Like he's got massive ability to swing and miss because he's so hyper aggressive. He needs to see the ball better, but when he runs into one, it's crazy. All right, boys. Pitcher of the year in the Big 12. It's obviously Blaine Traxel. He leads the league in innings. I'm just kidding. I love Blaine Traxel, but his numbers in the league are not as good.
Yeah.
I mean, my thing about Lucas Gordon is just go ahead.
No, you finish it, Kendall.
No, I was going to say when you look at Lucas Gordon, I mean, you look how consistent he's been. I mean, 1.84 ERA, 1.84 ERA in this era of the juice ball. Like that's really impressive to go with a 189, OBA. You know, obviously, Jerron Watts Brown is a really good pitcher, but I mean, 3.44 versus 1.84. That to me, that's just such a huge difference.
And it's even bigger if you look in conference play. Gordon with a 2.30 ERA in conference. Watts Brown 5.28, and really, there's no one else in my opinion that's really close to Gordon. If you look at the conference stats.
Yep, no, that's the right answer.
It's actually, honestly, when you look at the pitchers, like the leading pitchers in that league, it's an extremely pedestrian group of pitchers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the deal coming in the season, right? All these new arms. Yeah. I heard that TCU this weekend against West Virginia threw 3 freshman starters. 3 true freshmen were their rotation guys. Now, that would mean Cam Brown didn't start, Kendall, but I didn't check the box scores. It's always
my man Cam Brown came out of the bullpen in one of the games and got lit up like a Christmas tree. No bueno.
Yikes.
Yep. So that's a tough way to live in a league like that, right? 3 true freshmen on the rotation. That's not awesome. All right, Pac-12. We'll finish with the Pac-12. Quinn Matthews is the pitcher of the year, correct? Is that what you guys are saying?
I think so. Yeah.
What about Jay Stoffel?
Jay Stoffel's been good.
He's been really good.
I'm wondering if you guys have the same expression or same reaction. Look at Quinn Matthews' numbers and tell me if that makes you feel better about Stanford down the stretch. Because I have to be honest, I'm not in love with Stanford and the way they're playing right now. It's just sleepy to me. But then I look at Quinn Matthews' statistical season and I think, okay, that'll play.
Who else? Yeah, who else out there? I mean, he's thrown. Part of it is, again, the innings, the workhorse that he's been. He's thrown 69 innings with 86 strikeouts and a 2.60 ERA. I mean, it's a hell of a year. It really is.
Yeah, it's among the national leaders. I mean, it's like, yeah. So interesting. Now this is really tricky. Pac-12 Player of the Year. I'll give you a couple names. Ryan Campos is leading the league in hitting, 413. He's Arizona State's best player by far. They're in first place. Chase Davis and Kiko Romero are having incredible years. And don't look now, but Arizona is kind of making a run. And they still got to – they better not stop running, but they're definitely making a run. And, I get it. Hitting in Tucson is ideal, but they've got good numbers, Romero and Davis, and they're both good players.
Yep, that's true. Can I throw out Luke Keeschel for consideration here at Arizona State?
I would take that.
leads the conference in OPS in conference only games, 1289. He's got in conference play. He's got 7 home runs and 11 doubles. He steals bases. He hits for average. He hits for power. He plays up the middle, and he's a big part of one of the big surprise teams in the country. So for me, I just that's maybe the name that jumps out at me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at his conference only numbers right now, and you're right, Fitzy. Like, that's loud. Oof. Interesting.
Kendall,
you have a strong opinion here?
I like Campos. I just think when you look at Arizona State's turnaround, I think you can circle him, especially with his position, as a huge part of that. But
Yep.
Keishel's having a great showing as well. Also, kind of have my eye down the stretch. Is the batting average isn't quite there with Campos, but Garrett Forster at Oregon State, like he's been sizzling hot as of late. 7 home runs, 29 RBIs, 38 walks, 34 strikeouts, 317 average. So he's got to get that average up. But man, he's been red hot. And then Tommy Troy at Stanford's been really good.
Boys, important question. Is there any chance that we do a D1 Baseball Player of the Year award, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any chance we start calling that the Kurt Reed?
The Kurt Reed Award. I actually think that's got legs.
Did you actually find out when you were doing your reconnaissance on the series, the scoop on Kurt Reed?
No, nobody knows anything about Kurt Reed. Nobody knows what happened to Itchy Jones's Y when he went from Southern Illinois. It's like I felt like I was I felt like I asked an inappropriate question. It was not a well received question.
I think we need to have
I feel like this is not my time to jokingly ask questions.
We need to have you and Joseph R. Healy do a special edition podcast, Legends of the Valley. You can just tell Valley League stories, get to the bottom of some of this stuff.
By the way, the SID for baseball, I mean, there's so many great ones. The SID for baseball for the SEC, is it Ben Beatty? Is that how you guys pronounce his name?
I don't know.
He's amazing. Ben is awesome. They're all awesome. But Ryan Davis is but of course the SEC is going to have an awesome baseball SID, right? And Ben is amazing. But Ryan Davis of the Valley, this dude is passionate about the Valley. It's awesome. Like he just feeding us stuff for those broadcasts. He's so great. I've never met him. Have you met him, Fitzy?
I don't believe so. I think you talked about him before though. He's one of the all-time greats.
One of the all-time greats. So from here to 4, boys, the D1 Baseball Player of the Year award is the Kurt Reed. And from now on, for the rest of the season, we'll be talking about who's going to get the Kurt Reed. Is it going to be Dylan Cruz? Is it going to be Ethan Petrie? Who's going to get? It's going to be Paul Skeens. Has a pitcher ever won the Kurt Reed, the D1 Baseball Kurt Reed before?
Oh, AJ Reed, Brendan McKay both pitched.
There you go.
I think we've had maybe an actual full-time pitcher. We'd have to go back and look.
Interesting. Kendall, I'm going to need you to scrub the website, and anytime it says D1 Baseball National Player of the Year, insert Kurt Reed.
I love that.
Sounds good.
Get the peeps on that.
I'm gonna add Kurt to his own player profile. Kind of like the old MVP baseball. I'm just gonna make his power 99.
Yes.
His strength 99, fastball 99, and he's gonna be like 6'6", 240 pounds.
As he should be. Boys, speaking of Kurt Reed, this is the perfect time to get a subscription to D1Baseball.com. Use the code SAVE23 at checkout. You'll get 20% off. Subscription to D1Baseball.com. Save 23 at checkout. You get 20% off. Do not go into the postseason without D1Baseball.com. You're going to be watching all these games. You're going to want to look up player stats, advanced stats from 643. You're going to want to look up standings. You're going to look up RPI. You got to have this. You got to have it. Kendall, I just tweeted before we jumped on the hot mics here. Your piece today was so great about hey, I'm overwhelmed with all these results coming at me. There was like 13 sweeps in the power conferences last week. What does it all mean? What is your piece called today? Because whatever it's called, it was awesome.
Postseason buzz.
Postseason buzz. Oh, look at that. That's as catchy as the Kurt Reed Award.
Thank you.
And then Fitzy, you had a bunch of I would say over the last several weeks, Fitzy, you've been at a lot of places where it's teams that I want to learn about. Like if I'm a fan trying to lock in for the postseason, I need to know more about Coastal Carolina. I need to know more about Southern Miss. You captured that for me. So anyway, well done. Your piece
what he did capture over the weekend is a really good headline, referring to Peyton Eels as with the start of the headline being Electric Eels. That was really good, by the way.
I can't say that was an original thought. I think they've used that on Twitter before, but so hat tip to Kevin Davis.
Well, I thought it was original to you.
No, that's the first time I've used it.
Fitzy, do we know how to pronounce that? Is it eels or eelis?
Eels,
Eels,
correct.
like the whatever that thing is.
And that guy, by the way, is a no doubter all fit team. I mean, there's second base, always such a demanding position for the all fit team, but transfer from Division II, Cedarville, Ohio, 5th-year guy, 5'7", like stocky scrap dog second baseman who, gosh, I wish I could say this on the air, but I can't. But he's got more power than you think. He is just a winning player. He's so fun. He's a really
What were you going to call him? An ass kicker?
I'll tell you afterwards.
But Fitzy, Ryan Campos is 5'9", maybe. So I think he's on your radar for all.
I know you've put him out there before. Yeah. I got to see his Sun Devil.
He's short. He's very short. So, boys, well done. Way to power through it. You guys had the chat today. We podcasted. Well done. That's it. We'll do our weekend preview on Wednesday night, and that is it. We'll catch you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.